During the plenary session of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, a resolution was adopted calling on NATO member countries to support Ukraine in its efforts to achieve full membership as soon as possible, according to the text of the resolution. The Assembly urges member governments and parliaments of the North Atlantic Alliance to step up political and practical efforts to help Ukraine receive an invitation and become the 33rd member of NATO as soon as possible, the document states. The authors of the resolution emphasized the importance of strengthening military, financial, and humanitarian assistance to Ukraine, including the timely delivery of ammunition and modern weapon systems. The NATO Parliamentary Assembly recommended that the governments of the member countries of the alliance provide Ukraine with medium-range missiles for deterrence and self-defense. People's Deputy from the Servant of the People faction and head of the permanent delegation of Ukraine to the NATO PA Yair Chernev said this. RBC Ukraine reports with reference to his post on Facebook. According to him, we are talking about ballistic missiles with a range of 1,000 to 5,500 kilometers, in particular, such as Tomahawks, which are capable of striking the strategic depth of the enemy. The Ukrainian delegation managed to convince Western colleagues to support my proposal and include this item in the resolution of the next session of the Assembly, he said. According to the deputy, the adopted resolution is the first step that creates a legal basis for the further decision of the governments of the NATO countries to transfer the relevant weapons to Ukraine. Chernev also recalled that at the previous session, on the initiative of the Ukrainian delegation, the NATO Parliamentary Assembly called to allow Ukraine to strike deep into Russian territory, raising this issue to a political level. We hope for a positive decision this time as well, the People's Deputy concluded. Tomahawk is a family of long-range American multi-purpose cruise missiles designed for strategic and tactical missions. The missiles are capable of operating from underwater, surface, land and air platforms. The flight of the rocket is carried out at extremely low altitudes with the possibility of bypassing the topography of the area. They are in service on ships and submarines of the U.S. Navy and have been used in all major military operations involving the U.S. since they entered service in 1983. As of 2014, the estimated cost of one rocket was $1.45 million. Recently, the head of the Pentagon, Lloyd Austin, said that the Russians have moved their tactical aviation beyond the range of ATACMS missiles transferred to the armed forces. At the same time, Defense Minister Rustem Umerov explained that Ukraine handed the U.S. a list of targets for ATACMS deep strikes on Russia.
On August the 6th, the Ukrainian armed forces managed to invade Kherson region, taking control of a large territory and many prisoners of war. On November the 7th, Putin's army launched a counterattack with the goal of driving the Ukrainian armed forces out of Russian territory. The enemy army is trying to break through to Sudza through the territory of Zelený Shliak. In 2 weeks of fighting, Putin's army has not yet made significant progress, Forbes reports, and the Zelený Shliak Sudza highway is littered with destroyed or abandoned armored vehicles of the Russian armed forces. At the same time, the Kremlin is not going to give in and has increased its presence in the Kherson region to 50,000 servicemen. We are talking about units of the 155th Marine Brigade, the 76th, 83rd and 106th Airborne Brigades, which are fighting northwest of Zelený Shliak. We expect a major Russian offensive on my flank in the Kherson region in the near future, wrote Kriegsforscher, a drone operator for the Ukrainian Marine Corps who supported the Ukrainian Corps in Kherson. Initially, Putin's plan were to knock out the Ukrainian armed forces by the end of February 2025, but the plans changed after Donald Trump was elected to the post of head of the White House. On the one hand, Putin already controls 11% of Ukrainian territory after the events of 2022, but at the same time he does not want to give up even a small part of the Kursk region. 2 Russian airborne divisions, 1 airborne brigade and 1 marine brigade will launch an offensive with a lot of maneuvering. The Kriegsforscher warned. The occupiers will be confronted by the Ukrainian armed forces consisting of the 17th, 41st, 47th, 82nd and 95th Brigades, amounting to approximately 20,000 servicemen. The 17th Tank Brigade had recently been fighting defensive battles in the Sudza area. They had managed to control several of their T-64 tanks into supply vehicles. Footage from November the 16th shows a T-64 delivering ammunition to the Ukrainian armed forces at one of the positions, after which it opened fire on the enemy position with a 125mm gun. During its retreat to the base, the tank was attacked by an enemy drone. The armored vehicle itself was slightly damaged, but the crew survived and completed the combat mission. The Ukrainian forces are more than twice inferior in numbers to the enemy army, but both the artillery of the Ukrainian armed forces and the strikes by Western missiles on military facilities of the Russian armed forces in the Kursk region inspire optimism. Last week, the Ukrainian armed forces carried out a series of strikes on military ammunition depots and a command post of the Russian armed forces. Russia is trying to retake the Kursk region before Donald Trump's inauguration to take away a valuable bargaining chip from Kiev in peace talks. Ukrainian fighters told the Wall Street Journal that the Russians are attacking their positions with such intensity that they sometimes attack right over the bodies of their fallen comrades. They attack constantly, morning, afternoon, night, said Geny, a battalion commander in Ukraine's 47th Mechanized Brigade. He said that about 6 weeks ago, the Russians launched a counter-offensive, bringing in entire columns of armored vehicles. According to Geny, after losing a large number of armored vehicles, the Russians abandoned this strategy and began sending people on foot in small groups. It's not that hard to deal with 3 people, but when they go one after the other, some of them manage to move forward, he said. Sometimes it's just a few meters, but over a few weeks, it becomes significant progress. As the Wall Street Journal writes, unlike on the Eastern Front, where Ukrainian troops have been complaining for months about a shortage of ammunition and especially men, the brigades fighting in Kursk are generally well equipped. Geny said his unit, using American-made Bradley fighting vehicles, was able to conduct regular rotations of troops in the trenches, something that had become nearly impossible for units without the most modern equipment due to the constant threat of drones. According to Geny, in his area, the Russians have about 3 times more men than the Ukrainians and 6 times more explosive drones used to attack equipment and infantry. And one of the Ukrainian soldiers fighting near Sudza noted that the ratio of Ukrainians to Russian forces in the area is more than 10-1, and most of the soldiers in his battalion are wounded and unable to fight. The Russians are hard to count. The field they attack on is strewn with bodies. They literally step on the bodies of their comrades when they attack. Russia is also targeting supply lines and storage facilities with glide bombs that Ukrainian forces are unable to shoot down. Basic communications are also hampered because the Starlink satellite internet system does not work on Russian territory. Vyacheslav Komenko, a platoon commander in the 21st Mechanized Brigade of the Ukrainian troops, compared the battles in Kursk Oblast with the battles in Bakhmut, noting that in the 3rd year of the war, it has become difficult to motivate soldiers. 90% of the soldiers in his platoon are recruits who have little experience and desire to fight. People are tired. At least once a month, I have to remind them that they are fighting so that their grandchildren don't have to. In the 1st year of the war, I would never have thought of giving such a speech.